Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the mailbag edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. Glad to have you along with us on this New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's to everyone with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Don't forget, as we roll into the month of January, our friends at Blue Water Climate Control have a special deal going on, special incentives right now for a lot of things. You've got their service plan, their tune-up special is available, but they also have a great deal going on right now on these ductless single-zone split units that they have. And again, I've talked about these. My mom has one, and it's a fantastic unit for small space. It's perfect for a bonus room or a cabin, some kind of rental property, a shop that you might have, converted garage, anything like that where the room maybe is a little uncomfortable. This is a great opportunity to put this little unit in. It will service you and will heat and cool that room the way that you want. And it's a great opportunity right now to check them out. You can get more details at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. That's Blue Water Climate Control. Guys, plenty of questions as you expect in the Mailbag podcast as we get every week. So we'll dive right into them here, and we'll start with Birdie Man. And he wants to know, hey, I'm a bit raw, but do alumni and fans even matter at Tennessee? How can our leadership objectively compare Tennessee with its traditional rivals and peers and even feel the slightest bit comfortable about our football leadership? You know, I don't think it's a situation where the university doesn't care. I think that's crazy. I know for a fact Randy Boyd has repeatedly said that football is basically the front porch, you know, and that if you're going to grow your university, football in the South has to be successful. So I don't think it's a situation at all where they don't that they don't care. You know, I think Philip Fulmer's looking at this and saying that Jeremy Pruitt needs another year. And I think he's been very committed to that all season long, Rob.
Well, I mean, how do you look at the assistant coach's salary pool and just blithely say, these guys don't care? I mean, that's ridiculous when you look at the money that they are throwing at us. I mean, they just had an offensive line coach that was making $800,000. Am I wrong? I mean, forget about the offensive coordinator making $1.6 million. The dollars that just doesn't. You look at dollars, and that statement just doesn't hold water.
Yeah, I mean, Will Friend was making Paul Fortenberry type money. I mean, $2.4 million over a 3-year deal. I mean, I agree. I think it's whatever narrative. I mean, it all comes back to the narrative of the fans, the narrative of people on campus, the narrative. And, you know, I mean, for years, we got to back up the Brinks truck. We got to pay for a staff. We got to be able to bring quality assistants. Well, they did back up the money this past time. Philip gave Jeremy everything he could ask for. I'm gonna be interested to see how much money he has for these new openings he has. You know, is he going to be able to go out and pay $1 million for a Bo Davis or $1 million for an offensive line coach?
Are we talking John Palermo money, or are we talking, Will Friend money? I think it's going to be very telling.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll learn a lot. You know, if he goes out and he gets Bo Davis at $1 million a year or $900,000 a year, whatever, then I think that's a good sign. And if he's paying $350 or $400, because I mean, think about it. This past time, Brent, he went back and he took back some of those bigger salaries like Kevin Scherer and Chris Rumpf. Like those all of a sudden became Shelton Felton at half of the price, and then Joe Acevet at a substantially reduced rate and those type of things. So you have now Will Friend at $800,000 a year gone. T. Martin has been they've been able to pay him very little, because of the USC deal. Whether he's back or not, he or his position could command a lot more money. And then, Brian Niedermeyer's making right around $500,000 a year, there about a little less maybe. And, whether he's back or not, the same thing.
Those are two expiring deals, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Those two deals expire on January the 31st. All right. Next question is up. If T's deal isn't renewed, would Jason Simpson get a look there? Question number 2, everyone talks about Ty as a potential program changer for UT. For us that haven't seen him play or met him, what traits does he have that makes him that type of guy? And who is the 22 in-state guy that Tennessee can't miss on beyond Simpson and Nolan? And his final question, any early traction with Devin Hyatt and Adarius Redmond in the 23 class? Let's work bottom up, okay? Let's start in the 23s with Devin Hyatt and Adarius Redmond.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tennessee's in play there with both of them. I don't think anybody's close. And as long as Jalen's here and doing good things, then Tennessee's going to have a real good shot at Devin because the family's going to be here every weekend. And it just as simple as that. Darius Redmond's from Knoxville. He's got to get healthy. He was injured this past year, and then no camps. He goes out there and balls at camps this summer. He's going to just continue to add to his offer list. Next question.
All right. Who is the 22 in-state guy beyond Simpson and Nolan that is a must-get in your mind for Tennessee?
Man, that's tough because I could name a bunch of them. I mean, I really do. I mean, I think you wrote it. We've got to continue, and I'm going to continue to hammer the point. Tennessee's got to land a bunch of these guys.
I'm going to throw one out there, Austin, because you know this better than me, but I'm going to throw one, and you can bounce back to me and tell me I'm crazy, which, I mean, I am most of the time, and you tell me that a lot of the times anyway. But I'm going to throw out Dallin Hayden because I think, one, Dallin is a good athlete. He proved that this year as a running back. He can play
2,000 yards,
more than one position, and he has ties and relationships to guys in West Tennessee that could marry some things together. I'm not saying Dallin Hayden means you sweep or you get everybody, but I think he could be a guy.
I do think kids gravitate towards him, yes.
I think that's his personality. So I'm going to go Dallin Hayden. I know that maybe sounds crazy because maybe like a Jordan James or an Isaiah Horton, maybe there's some guys that people say, well, he's a better prospect. But I think that what Dallin Hayden can bring to the table, I'm going to throw him out there as my guy.
Bring you a lot of unofficial visitors.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for a kid that, and I love to joke with him, he's always like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he's always just so reserved. I mean, kids do gravitate towards him. He's got a personality when he's around his peers.
Yeah.
And so I agree. I think getting Dallin in the boat would be, a smart move. Hey, at the end of the day, though, Ohio State and Notre Dame, they're both in the college football playoff. They have recruited that kid as hard as anybody the last few months. And I know everybody wants to go, well, he's Aaron's kid. I mean, it's, he can't. But, again, the kid wants to play running back. So I think Tennessee's got to show him, yeah, we see him. We will give you a shot at running back, and he's got to believe it. If that happens, then
they didn't take Chase.
Yeah, and they didn't. You're right. They didn't recruit Chase, and Aaron Hayden is not going to make his kid go somewhere. He is going to be all in for his kid wherever he wants to go.
They didn't recruit Chase. That was another staff. That's I think that you can't lump that in. And I know Aaron knows that. You can't lump that in.
They didn't take him as a transfer.
Correct, but mostly because they were so full at the position, and they're really still full at that position. I think that's why you'll see some guys, moving around. I mean, I think Ty's, likely going to transfer, even though he hasn't announced that yet. I think there are candidates to move to defense from the running back position. So.
All right, let's go to what do you like about Ty Simpson beyond fit? Is it just his physical traits? What do you like about him because you've said for months he's the most important guy for Tennessee in 22.
Well, he is. I mean, he's the most important recruit Tennessee's had in the last 10, 15 years. I mean,
whoa.
Why?
Because you never had a quarterback in this state that you've got this kind of relationship with. I've never said he's a lock for the Vols, but they're positioned as well as they can be positioned. At the end of the day, this year, flat out sucked for Tennessee when it comes to the recruitment of Ty Simpson. You didn't score points. You lost games. But more importantly, you're just not exciting on offense. Now, he looks up, and Alabama's throwing for 1 million yards, and Clemson's throwing for 1 million yards in the ACC, and even a team like Ole Miss, who I don't think is even in the sniff for Ty Simpson. He looks up and sees them throwing for 1 million yards too. Can Tennessee prove to him we weren't able to do the same because of our quarterbacks? I think there's going to be an effort to show him, hey, look at this. Look, this is what we missed out on, not having competent quarterback play, and why we struggled so badly on offense. If we get the right guy, we can put up those points and yards too. So again, I just keep going back to the fact that for me, arm talent's really, really good. Accuracy's phenomenal. He moves really well, but it's his moxie. The kid's got a little. He's a quality kid, but has a little umph in him when it comes to he has a great belief in himself, and I think that just kids will respond well to him. I think he's got fire.
Do you think his dad's a candidate? potentially?
I mean, I think Jeremy's going to look at every avenue, if he has openings. But right now, the only opening he has is offensive line. And so, I don't see Jason Simpson.
He's not an O-line coach.
Jason Simpson's not coaching the O-line.
Right.
Correct. And I don't think he would coach quarterbacks either. I mean, would it be impossible for him to coach quarterbacks? No, he could coach quarterbacks, but I don't think that's a smart move, because how's he effectively going to go into another quarterback's home and say, I'm going to give your kid every chance, and that mama or daddy believe him when his kid's in the room.
Howard Harrison Bailey and Caden Salter not taking everything he says with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have him on staff potentially, another thing to have him coaching quarterback. So right now Tennessee doesn't have an opening at receivers, and they don't have an opening at tight ends, and we'll see over the next month if anything even materializes. Do they give T. Martin a new contract, or do they not?
All right, Bronco Vol wants to know how many prospects in state do you see Tennessee potentially signing? I'm going double digits. I think looking at this state, 10's not out of the realm of possibility that Tennessee should sign. Not saying they will sign. I think there are 10 quality players in this class in the state of Tennessee in 22 that should be a priority for Tennessee.
I think there's more close to 20 quality prospects in the state, and 10 should be the bare minimum they sign. Because you factor in. I think if you can, get the right guys, all of a sudden, if you get Dallin and Ty, all of a sudden the Vols I think are going to get Jordan James, unless something crazy happens. At that point, his teammates, Isaiah Horton, you'll have to work that one. But I think once a bunch of those guys that play 7-on-7 together start to, if they were to pick Tennessee, I think that they all could kind of fall to the Vols, So, I mean, again, I think it all starts with Ty and Dallin, and then you work your way out from there.
And you could sign 10 from Murfreesboro and Nashville. Is that correct? Is that not?
I mean, yeah, you could. You sign probably a little less than 10 from there, but I mean, you got Barron Brown, you got Fisher Anderson, you got the Wade twins over at Summit,
Horton?
Horton, James. I mean, you continue to look around. I mean, there's some really good players in the state, and they're going to be coveted by a lot of good teams. So
you could about get to 10 in the mid-state. Yeah, you really could be close. I mean, again, I wrote about this. I mean, the thing I like about the class of 22 in state is it's not loaded out. It's not overloaded at one position. It's not 5 safeties, right? It's not 5 wide receivers at the top end. I mean, there are offensive linemen, quarterback, running back, receivers, safeties. I mean, it's got a lot of depth to it in terms of different types of guys, not all the same type of guy. And so I think that's the one thing that stands out to me. All right, let's roll on here. If Pruitt stays and can turn it around, how many more years do you think he needs to turn it around? Well, I mean, look, on that, it depends on – I mean, the roster is not complete. They need to continue to build, and you're never – I don't think you're ever, quote, there. I mean, there are a few teams in the country that are there, okay? We saw Florida last night. Florida's not there to where they can lose a handful of guys and things roll on. Alabama's an exception, right? They can lose 3 or 4 guys and still be okay. So, top end guys. I mean, Jalen Waddle gets hurt. And nobody even remembers he was on the team, right? Because they haven't missed anything about him, at all. So there's some programs like that. But, I think to be where everybody wants to be, it remains an ongoing process. If Pruitt is fired and we get a head coach with previous experience success, do we go into rebuild mode? If yes, will it be another 3 to 5 years? And if not a full rebuild, can he make what we have work next year with better coaching? Long story short, do we have the talent to win at least a few more games, make a bowl game, even if, et cetera, if coaching is better?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you go to a normal year, you have 4 non-conference games. Tennessee plays Pitt next year, and then 3 games that are layover or should be, layovers. So, or rollovers. So to me, they should be 4-0 in non-conference play next year. And I get everybody's going to go, well, BYU and Georgia State. Okay. Well, I'm going to roll that as the anomaly. They should be 4-0 in non-conference play next year. And then can they do what only 4 Tennessee teams have done since 2007? And that's get at least to 500 in league play. If they do that, then they're 8-4. If not, they're 7-5 or 6-6. They went 3-5 this year against the teams they were supposed to play. So that would put them 7-5. If they can get to 4-4, they're 8-4. The question is when is it good enough? Like, I mean, you have to remember, Brown. I mean, this team 8-4 there's only 2 regular seasons since Philip Fulmer was fired where they went 8-4 in the regular season, 15 and 16.
And 16 was a massive disappointment.
And it was correct. And then 15, everybody goes, well, they blew all those leads, But I mean, the point being is it's just not happened a whole lot. So is 8-4 good enough? I mean, I get that's not the standard. I get that. I get that ball fans want more. But like if Tennessee went 8-4 next year, which is as good of a regular season as they've had since Philip Fulmer was fired, since the SEC championship appearance in 2007, is that good enough to say, okay, he has earned a year 5, or is 8-4 going to go, because at some point, the fans, have to realize that, you got to be able to walk before you can run. And I get it. They've not won enough. This year was a disaster. I understand the angst and the want of some to move on. But like next year is 8-4 good enough?
Well, and I think it depends on what the 8-4 looks like and what the expectations are. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of this. Okay. You look at Lane Kiffin's 1 year here. Everybody loved that team. Why? They became explosive on offense, Rob. They got better, right? They almost beat Alabama. They beat Georgia. So they beat a couple of teams that were competitive in those games, right? Okay. Then you look at Butch's 2 8-win teams. Okay. The last one was a total disappointment because they should have won more because it was a really good team.
Beat Florida and Georgia.
So it depends on what kind of 8-4 it is. Are you
and Lane trash talked Urban?
Yes, he did. He was 180-degree opposite of what Tennessee had experienced the 12, 15, whatever previous years.
If they could have the 8-4 that Butch had in 2015, which is 4 tough, close losses. You almost beat Alabama. You do beat Georgia. You lost to Oklahoma. You lost to Arkansas.
When Butch declined to go for it on 4th and inches at the goal line.
Yeah, if you have that season, I have a tough time seeing that Tennessee fans don't at least come around a little and go, okay, I can. We made progress. Problem is they just want to go 0-60.
Well, everybody does.
Yeah,
I mean that's every fan base. You know what I'm saying? I mean every fan base want to be Clemson and Alabama tonight, or in Ohio State. I mean they want to be that school tonight, and I get it. That's what, and for Tennessee fans, it's frustrating because they were better than those schools for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I get
it. and the reality is, as you get further away from it, you probably will. You know what? Should have appreciated 45-5 a lot more than what you did.
Yeah, no doubt.
Should have. And that's, I'm not being critical of fans. I think that's human nature. While you're in the moment, Rob, you're like, wow, this is. I mean, what a failure. They can't beat Steve Spurrier
again.
Don't look at it from the big picture of hey. Losing 1 game is pretty good,
The 16-19 record for Jeremy bothers me far less if I'm a Tennessee fan than all the double-digit losses. That to me is the more concerning of anything that goes on.
The lack of competitiveness against some teams. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I mean, because let's face it, most of these games haven't been 10 or 11 or 13. Most of the games against the big 3 have been 20 plus.
Yeah.
So like that to me is way far more concerning than 16 and 19. Because again, there is no to put it in Disney terms, there is no fast pass on the rebuild. There's no going right to the front of the line. And so to build it back, you've got to wait in line. Problem is like this is like getting on It's a Small World at a 240-minute wait, and everybody's like, I'm waiting in line for that.
Well, and Rob, every Tennessee fan's been in the same line for 10 years.
Yeah, man, and the SEC makes it all the more difficult. I mean, if you hit a home run higher in the ACC, you can go from 9th.
You can go 0-60 a little faster. Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to beat Clemson, but you can go from 9th to 2nd quickly.
None of the old timers want to hear it, but the best thing that could happen to the Vols is get Alabama off the schedule every year. I mean, like. You're better off to play an A&M or an Auburn or whoever. I mean, that to me, like that's the roughest thing that Tennessee's got going for it is every year you have Alabama, and as long as Nick's there, I mean, like I won't say it has been a loss since 2007, but I mean, like you just know that like that's something you're going to have to, cross, and a hurdle you're going to jump over. And it's really you're not really able to jump over it.
All right, let's roll along here. Is Hugh Freeze being blackballed by Greg Sankey in the SEC office? Seems like he may be around at next year's coaching cycle. So you just roll with Pruitt and hire Freeze in 21, Rob Lewis.
I think he's being blackballed by all the prostitutes he called on his university-issued cell phone while on recruiting trips representing his university and being the highest-paid state employee in Mississippi.
I don't think Greg Sankey's necessarily interested in him being back, but I don't think he's blocking or can block anybody from hiring him. I think Auburn wasn't interested because the NCAA is on their campus. Are they going to hire a guy who's had NCAA problems, and recruiting infractions? And at South Carolina, there was no interest there. I don't think Hugh Freeze had a lot of interest in South Carolina either. And so I think that Hugh Freeze is going to be at Liberty next year, and will be the hottest name again, or will be the most talked about name again next year. And I think the further you get away from his transgressions, as we talked about in the last podcast, you're not punished for life. But the further you get away from it, then the easier it is for somebody to come back and say, hey, he's rehabbed. He's ready to go. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's just natural.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the guy that people don't deserve a second chance. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I think fans really, really drastically underestimate how unpalatable making that hire is to somebody who is a university president.
Yep. Second part of that question, can you discuss in-state recruiting misses the past few years and then the upcoming 22 class? Can't keep going after Munden, Mims, Nyland Green, and other in-state guys, then missing on both. Foundation for Ball's best teams have a core of Tennessee blood. We simply aren't beating Georgia, Bama, and Clemson for their own guys right now.
I agree.
I wrote this. You got to have a core of 20. That's why the 22 class is so important. You got to win in the state of Tennessee, because Austin, it is hard to go to Atlanta and say, hey, we're going to pull 7 kids out of there, and we're going to take guys that Georgia wants. Okay, or it's hard to say we're going to Alabama and take guys away from, you might get a guy. You can get some, but you're not going to blanket get a bunch of guys out of there. And it's a different.
You got to sprinkle, but to me,
sprinkle it, absolutely sprinkle.
I love analogy. So,
are we going
the
back
Big Bowl ice cream is the Tennessee nucleus. Keep the kids in state. That's the Big Bowl ice cream. Then you put your toppings, the sprinkles, and your Oreos or whatever. That's the kids from North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Alabama. So I agree. I mean, wholeheartedly. I mean, there are some years that are better than others, but to me, Tennessee can't just blanket miss on the state of Tennessee like they did this year. I mean, they chose not to go after some of those kids, and then others, they just couldn't win out in. So, I mean, Tennessee's got to be way more of a player in their own state. And I know they want to be in 22, but I think they need to be every year.
I agree. I think that they have to prioritize Tennessee more than they have on a consistent basis. All right, CD Vol wants to know, do you think Pruitt got humbled this past season? Do you think he will reevaluate how he looks at doing certain things, such as playing young players, sticking with one quarterback, sticking with a set 5 on the offensive line, simplifying his defense so players can play faster, delegating more, etc.? Look, this is a real simple answer for me. If you're not self-evaluating what you do at the end of every year, at the end of every season, then you're not doing a very good job. Okay. And I don't care if you're a football coach. I don't care if you're an administrator. I don't care if you're in business. We sit here and we'll talk about and visit about what we did well in covering this team this year, content-wise, and what we didn't do well. If you line up and say, hey, let's pull out the calendar from last year and do the same 12 things, then you're not growing. Okay. You're not improving. You've got to always be evolving. So I would hope Jeremy Pruitt didn't need to get humbled to do that. I would think that would be a part of the self-evaluation. Should he be humbled after going 3-7 and be taking a close look at a lot of things in the mirror? He better be, right? I mean, I think that's simple. Am I wrong? I guess not.
No, I don't think you're wrong. 3-7 at this point, and as AP mentioned, it's not just 3-7. It's the double-digit losses where you're not close to the programs that hard school fans and people that donate money to this university want to beat Georgia, Alabama, Florida.
See, and of course, that's a double-edged sword because, people get mad when you lose by 20, but then if you lose by 6, then everybody goes, "Oh, I'm believing moral victories." I mean, like you really can't win. You either win or you lose,
Well,
and
but
it really is. It's pretty simple in that regard. Even though, really, there are different ways to lose. There are different ways to compete and find out how you're doing. I mean, like Alabama, they just don't lose games in this league. So if you can hang around with them, which has been very rare, and when Tennessee's done it, it happened ironically has been in Tuscaloosa. Then to me, that shows growth.
I think what rankled so many people this year was and he got baited into it by a reporter, but when he like emphatically came out swinging about we're closing the gap, and when the scoreboard against all three of your biggest rivals emphatically said that was not the case. I mean, I think that hurt.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. All right, let's roll on here. Best guess on a time frame for the internal investigation to be completed. Would it be safe to say that everyone is confident nothing major will surface from it? And then also chances with following assistants joining Tennessee's staff. Montario Hardesty, Marion Hobby, or Bo Davis on the defensive line. Do you see Todd Watson promoted to the defensive staff? I don't see Todd Watson being promoted. Bo Davis is going to be coveted by some people, including Tennessee. Marion Hobby is going to be looking for a job. I think he's going to stay in the NFL. I don't know about Montario. That's an interesting one there. Is he ready for an SEC job? I think Montario is an up and coming guy, and as a coach, but I don't know. He's in a pretty good spot with Will Healy, who's going to be somewhere else sooner rather than later. But he would be a name I think that everybody would wonder about if there was an opening at the receiver spot as well. As for the investigation, I don't have a timeline, and I'm not going to sit here and say emphatically that there's nothing going to come of it. So
I'll echo that.
Yeah. So we'll roll on to the next question. When guys opt to enter the portal, do most of them have in-depth conversations with the staff before pulling the trigger to do so? Does the university have to sign off in order for a player to enter the portal? Does the university try to find landing spots for transfers? Just curious.
They do have, in 95% of the instances, they have in-depth conversations with the kids before they enter the portal. Most of the kids come to the coaches and say, "Look, I'm thinking about going in the portal." Coaches will either understand or they'll try to talk them out of it, and give them reasons why they shouldn't enter the portal. You don't have to be approved by the university, to my knowledge. I think it's literally contacting compliance and saying, "I'd like to be placed in the transfer portal." And then what was the last question?
Do schools try to help guys get land places?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think in most instances they do, if they can, because, especially if a kid's going down. Like, look, okay, do you think LSU's going to help Eric Gilbert find a place to play? No. But do you think if a kid at LSU is going to, go down to,
Instate,
then yeah, they're going to make the calls for those kids.
Yeah. All right. Reading the tea leaves, it feels like the momentum behind Pruitt staying on staff or staying here for next season. It feels like there's momentum for there. If that is indeed the case, how do you think it will be communicated to the fans? Were Doug Matthews' comments the closest we will get to confirmation of his return? Interesting. Does the chancellor say something, or is Jeremy Pruitt make a couple of coaching hires and
that's
kind of roll on about it? I think she should say something personally.
Well, yeah. I mean, you watch her Twitter, Brent, and she's tweeting about the basketball team. She didn't really tweet about the football team, especially when they beat Vanderbilt. So, I mean, not that that's a signifying mark that, how she feels. I'm just saying, like, if you come out and you say something positive about Jeremy Pruitt and the football team, even if it's in a tweet, then to me, like, that signifies you're behind Jeremy Pruitt,
Investigation.
I mean, if the investigation is done, then I think you got to come out and say something.
I agree with that. Once
it's done.
But I don't think there's any way she says anything before that.
No. I totally agree. I mean, the investigation, what it turns up, will determine, what happens with Jeremy Pruitt, I believe. So she's not going to say anything now. But again, we've reached out to her to see if she wants to comment on timetable and where the investigation is. And she has not responded, and her staff has not responded at this point in time. Don't know that they will, but trying to get an update on where that's at, because that's what you're supposed to do, and that's what everybody wants to know. So we'll see. All right, let's go a little bigger picture of college football here. This is from Smokey and the Bandit. Would love to get your all's thoughts on the college football playoff and whether it's been good for college football. What changes would you make? Keep the same, increase the number of teams, back to the BCS? In my opinion, it feels like it's created even less parity in the game in both on-field results and in the recruiting landscape. Thoughts on the playoffs? More teams, less teams?
I don't think the playoff is responsible for, creating less parity. I think Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney are responsible.
I think it's both. I mean, I think you're right, but I also think that, the way it's set up with only 4 teams, that inevitably, for what you're saying, you end up with the same kind of group of 4 teams. I mean, it's really been Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and then a rotation of Oklahoma. Michigan State made it for a year. Washington made it for a year. Georgia made it for a year. Notre Dame's now this year. So, I mean, I think they need to expand to 8. I think that would be good for college football, because more teams in, better chance that you have one of those teams 5 through 8 upset one of those other teams, and then make a little bit of a run.
I do not think it needs to be 8, because I think you're going to see 2 blowouts on Friday. I think you get 2 mismatches in a 4-team playoff. So
you're saying a bye for the first 2 seeds and having 5 and adding 5 and 6?
Yeah, I wouldn't make it 8. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I mean, Clemson, the ACC is so trash that Clemson, and the way Dabo has it going there, I mean, they're in. And Alabama is an anomaly. Nobody's ever dominated this league the way Nick has. And once he's gone, which he's got to be in the next 5 years, I don't see that continuing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is a little stale because it is the same teams, but I'm whether you have 8 teams, whether you have 6 teams, whether you go back to another direction, or in some ways, I think you're still going to have the same core of teams up there. And what's unusual about this is what you're saying, Rob. We've had a couple teams up there, Alabama in particular, that's just got up there and stayed. Nebraska had their run, and they were in it every year for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, but then it changed. Nobody's been able to stay in it the way that Alabama has been able to stay in it. 8 regular season losses in 10 years for Nick Saban, which is just
in the toughest
crazy
conference in college football.
It's just crazy. Austin, can a coach contact a player on another team without that player having gone into the portal?
No.
Also, is the selecting coach obligated to contact the player's present coach? Once a kid goes in the portal, you don't have to
no, it's fair game.
It's fair game at that point.
At that point, it's fair game.
But you're not supposed to have any contacts.
Correct. So let's say, like I said, would Tennessee be a player for Eric Gilbert if he goes into the portal? I do believe they would. But do I think they'd land him? Yeah, I think that's a different deal. But do I think they'd be a player? Sure, I do. I think if he goes into the portal, Tennessee would be a player. But he's not in the portal yet. So then that's kind of where that thing is. And I think that's where a lot of these kids are, because I think I think they're waiting to see, like, when's the one-time transfer going to go into effect? They've passed it, but is it going to be sanctioned by this league? To me, like, that changes a lot of things. Like, if you're Eric Gilbert, you gonna go to Georgia, Alabama, or Tennessee if you can't transfer school to school in this league, or you gonna go LSU to Clemson?
Right. Well, it's a good point. I do say this. I mean, there could be some third-party conversations, right? I mean, you talk to a kid's high school coach, about his future kids, future players, and if he happens to bring up a kid, I mean, I think some of that happens from time to time with this stuff. So, I mean, some of these kids go into the portal with pretty good idea of where they're going.
Well, I mean, we continue to use Eric Gilbert as the example. It's totally legal for Harrison Bailey to have a conversation and kind of find out where his head's at, and then go and tell Jeremy Pruitt, I think he's going to go to Alabama, or I think he'd have some interest here. So I mean, like, that's totally legal for Harrison Bailey to have contact with Eric Gilbert, just not Jeremy Pruitt or any of the staff.
Do you think the guys will kick the tires on quarterbacks like Helinski or Bentley? Both have proven they can play at this level. I don't think so either. I don't.
Helinski's buddies with Brian Maurer, and I just don't see that.
Yeah, I don't see that. And Bentley's jumped around a couple of different places. Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see either one of those guys in the SEC. Am I the only one that thinks COVID-19 had a huge impact on this team? If you go back and watch the first half of the Georgia game, it's not the same team that played against Kentucky. It's almost like the light came on and they realized they were being forced to play due to TV contracts. Remove ESPN from the equation, and there would not have been a season. COVID affected everyone, but it did not affect everyone equally. I don't think Tennessee decided at the half at Georgia, hey, we don't want to play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they go. No, I don't think they were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're having to play
TV contracts.
Now, I think there's some players who aren't interested in playing in bowl games, okay, that are ready for in a meaningless bowl game. I do think that, but I don't think anybody said in the middle of the season, what the crap are we doing out here? Let's not even try down the stretch.
COVID's not the reason Tennessee lost 6 in a row. Right. Terrible quarterback play, the inability to defend the middle of the field, those type of things. Now, as part of the equation to winning, chemistry, 100%. Was the chemistry on this team like it was on last year's team? No, not even close. I think COVID had an impact on that, which I think can affect how players play and potentially affect a game or so, because this team was never that close, because they practiced and then they went right back to their little cubbyhole, their dorm room or their apartment, and they didn't like have a lot of team functions. There was not a lot of team bonding. I've talked to enough people to know, that was a real thing.
What's this team's identity? When looking at other teams during the bowl season, you sort of know what they're good at on offense, defense. What specifically is Tennessee good at? I don't think they had an offensive identity. I wrote that all season long. I don't think I just don't think they had one. Defensively, we know what they want to do. We know what this system is. We see it every week in the SEC. We saw it being effective a year ago when Tennessee won close games. They didn't execute their system. Okay, they struggled at the star position. They struggled in the middle of the field in coverage. They did not get after the quarterback. So defensively, you know what they want to be. They just weren't able to do that when it was all said and done. All right, a couple more, and then we're out the gate here on the mailbag edition of the podcast.
We're going to work on your rhyming skills. A couple more out the door.
Okay, so you mean rap? I mean, what are you looking for here? All right, here we go. Heard Walter Nolan is at IMG now. Is that right, AP?
I've not heard that.
I've not heard that either. Any clue what seniors are returning? I don't know where Matthew Butler's at. I bet Velus Jones returns. I think that he would be. I think he would return. But I don't know about some of the rest of the seniors. I think Matthew Butler is an important one that Tennessee would like to have back. Cade Austin, I get the feeling he's probably going to go if he feels like his number is going to be decent enough in terms of draft status. What do you think on Cade?
I think Cade's going to be back.
That's going to be back.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be a big get for Tennessee, obviously.
Did you just say he was going to be gone?
Yeah, I thought he was going to be gone.
I think he's going to be back.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All right.
Been wrong, though, before.
So have I. Plenty of times. All right. A couple more questions from this guy here. Would the Bama Online boss be making such a huge deal about the internal investigation that will likely net minimal penalties, if any? And how quick would you get run out of Tuscaloosa, Baton Rouge, Athens, Starkville, Auburn, College Station, the regulars, for making such a huge deal out of it? I don't know that I'm making a huge deal out of it.
Has there been anything on our front page?
Other than the fact that everybody wants to know what Jeremy Pruitt's status is, and I think it centers around whether or not something comes out of this investigation.
What a ridiculous question! How many stories have we written about the investigation? I haven't written one. AP, I don't think you have. Hubbard, I don't think.
No, we've talked about it on podcasts or on a message board. Answering the question, and it's something you have to talk about. I mean, like, there is an active investigation. So I mean, like, that doesn't mean. But again, as I said the day that it happened, guys, guess what? There's an internal investigation on your campus every year, and there's an internal investigation on Georgia's campus every year. You just don't know about it, and there's the difference. Florida just sanctioned penalties, and nobody knew it was coming.
Absolutely, they did. What positions do you see the Twins from Summit High playing in college, the Wade Twins?
I think one's a linebacker. The other one wants to play quarterback. If he's not a quarterback, I think he'd be a heck of a safety.
Thoughts on Pope wanting to be the guy at tight end? He's a senior. He wants more opportunities to catch passes. I think the question for him in the transfer portal, how many people trust the back from a health standpoint?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is somebody going to take a chance on giving up a spot, okay, an initial for him with the uncertainty around the back? I think that's going to be the problem. And I like Austin Pope. I think Tennessee missed him this past year, but I don't know how many schools are going to be willing to take that chance there.
Yeah, and what's he wanting out of this? Is he wanting to try to go to another Power Five, or does he try to go play for Butch at Arkansas State, or does he, does he go to some pass happy offense where he knows he's going to catch a bunch of balls, but it's at a lower level? I mean, you know what I mean? Is it about catching passes? Is it about playing for a championship? Is it about? I mean, I never would have thought Eli Wolf could end up at Georgia, but yet he did. So.
Also wants to know about any defensive backs potentially coming in transfer wise. I think Tennessee would like to look at Jamie Robinson, right? AP, there's some ties there. The kid from South Carolina.
There's ties because of Shelton Felton, and the notion is he's probably going to go wherever T-Rob goes. So we'll see.
And I mean, they clearly want one in the transfer portal, no question about that. Well, all right, last mailbag question here. What are your guys' impressions of Tyler Barron in year one? Do you think he will develop into more of a pass rusher or a solid 5 technique? What are your thoughts on Barron, Rob, as a freshman?
I think 5 technique. I think he's gonna be a really good player, like a really good player. But I just don't see the burst or the explosion that makes me think he's going to be a big time pass rusher. I mean, what do you guys think?
I agree. I won't say big time pass rusher. I think that the verdict's still out on that, but I do agree that I think he's more likely a 5 technique.
Yeah, and I thought he had a nice year. I thought he was an instinctive football player. I was impressed with his instincts. He clearly was a guy who didn't just out muscle somebody in high school or just run around somebody in high school. I mean, he knows how to use his hands. He's got a lot of skill and a lot of football technique about him. I was impressed with what his game looked like.
And I don't mean that as a negative. I just don't see him as the Ojulari. I don't see that kind of quick twitch from him. I tell you who. I think he's a better version of who's the kid from Chattanooga, Hubbard? Jason Hall.
Yeah.
I think he's a better version of that.
Okay. As we go out the door here, playoffs. You got 2 blowouts coming, Rob?
I do personally. Certainly one. I was surprised that I saw the Clemson line is just 7 or so. I was surprised by that. Alabama's favored by 20, and I think that sounds about right, if not a little low. But Clemson walked up Ohio State last year. They lost some guys on defense, Simmons in particular, but I have a hard time seeing that one being close.
All right. And lastly for you, Rob, Tennessee plays basketball on Saturday against Alabama at home in their SEC opener. Any concerns there for Tennessee with the Tide?
I think Alabama's been a disappointment. Kentucky takes all the ink for being just a disaster in the SEC because they're 1-6. But Alabama's 5-3, got just blown out by Stanford. Barely beat Furman at home, and Furman's a good team, but they're also Southern Conference, and Bama brought some guys back. I thought they would be a lot better. Bama can play, but I just anybody that's reading the message board knows that I'm pretty high on this basketball team.
Is that game on the road?
No, it's here.
Okay, yeah, Tennessee's gonna roll. If it was at Coleman. Balls struggle at Coleman Coliseum.
It's a pit. It's a black hole.
It's been a black hole for Tennessee for sure.
Just the feeling of it when you walk in, it sucks your soul.
But if you're a Tennessee fan, enjoy the heck out of this basketball team, and don't look to April. Enjoy the ride to April, because this is a fun team to watch. That's only going to get better. They were certainly fun to watch against Missouri on Wednesday night. That's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast presented by our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Don't forget about their guaranteed heating tune-ups taking place in January and February. No heater repairs through March 31st, or they'll give you a 50% discount off of the price of the repair. Certain restrictions do apply. You can book online for a special price. Check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. Savings if you book online for them. They'll take care of all of your heating and air needs. Again, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great New Year's Eve, everybody.